and they don't know they're in a film. They're just behaving. And the sort of holy grail of acting for camera is really about trying to get close to behavior as opposed to performance. And they had so much to teach us about that. But the horse playing with rubbing himself up and down on the back of Peter Mullen's jacket and all that hat stuff was totally improvised and spontaneous, and Stephen loved it and everybody around with it. And there are lots of things like that in the film where the horse would do something utterly accidental and it would look like the most beautiful piece of acting you've ever seen.
Absolutely. And Richard, can you talk about the challenges of this script? First of all, tonally, I guess, because it starts off, it's very broad, very lush in a way, emotionally at the beginning of the film, but it gets darker gradually. It goes into some very, very dark territory. Was it difficult to handle that as a screenwriter, to tread?
Look, it was a joy working with Stephen. It wasn't very scary working with him because he's very fertile of mind. So if you come up with one idea, he'll say, or you could do this, or this, or this, or this. And you just steal his best idea and then say it's yours. But in a way, the real challenge that we had was more to do with the structure of it and with trying to, I think, make each world 360 degrees to try and give the feeling that you could have given a whole film to each of those worlds, so that we were starting again time after time. And
so in case people don't know, the film structurally follows Joey.
It's a sort of baton. Yeah. We talked about it like a relay race.
Yeah.
Joey keeps moving through. And in fact, the first thing that I did when I came on board was take Albert, the boy, out of the middle of the movie. Because when I read the novel to my daughter, and in the novel he disappears because Joey, the horse, only sees who he sees.
Yeah.
And when we got to the end and Albert came back in again, I had trouble reading because I was crying, and she had trouble listening because she was crying. And I thought, well, that's enough. That is going to work. So we can take the big risk of pulling Albert out and then going with the more radical structure.
And the play is structured in a
the play puts the play puts Albert back in more, interweaves him. I think because, I mean, partly one of the, I hope everyone reads the books. It's the most beautiful book. And if you can see the play. And each of these things has been able to add a new dimension. And the film does have the extraordinary horses and does have this extraordinary epic beauty and size. You know, the No Man's Land is No Man's Land.
Did the fact that it was a World War I movie, did that give you pause in any way? Because you're responsible for one of the great works about World War I, and Blackadder Goes Forth, which is just amazing. Were you worried about mining the same territory? Or?
Not really, no. I mean, I had more pause about doing Blackadder, which did seem like a risky proposition to try and be funny about one of the worst things that ever happened. So, no, in fact, I was delighted to revisit the war in a completely different way. And I was really thrilled at the premiere here. My 10-year-old son was given the job of handing Prince William a book of the film beforehand. So he described it the day before. He said, "You realise tomorrow is the most important day of my childhood." And we went through all this stuff, and he saw the princess, and he stood next to Stephen, and then we watched the movie, and we got into the cab afterwards, and he said, "I've learnt one thing from tonight." And I thought he was going to say, you know, royals are just like normal people, or I shouldn't get nervous. And I said, "What did you learn?" And he said, "I've learnt you must never, ever go to war. It's stupid thing." So I love still being engaged in the issue of telling people how foolish war is.
Absolutely. But there's a wonderful thread that runs throughout the film and really comes together towards the end, if anyone has seen it, and if not, look forward to it, about decency in war, and decency coming out in people, I mean, on both sides.
It's a sort of key, we both feel in the end that's the key message of the film, and I think by the end of the film you feel this tremendous sort of yearning for peace because everybody the horse encounters on both sides pretty nearly is full of a sort of common sense of decency and a hope that it will end.
And the horse is an emblem of our capacity for courage and hope, and it's sort of the talisman, if you like, of the horse appeals to the best in our humanity, and that somehow everybody who comes into contact with Joey, be they English or German or French, or if they're officer class or privates, they're reminded of something that's innately good within themselves. And I think to make a film about that subject, really, our capacity for love set against the backdrop of one of the most horrific acts of atrocity that we committed against each other, is a very beautiful thing to make a film about.
Absolutely. It strikes me as well that in the war sequences, at least, there's not really an overt villain in the movie. Was that again a deliberate?
The enemy is war itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Let's talk about Captain Nichols next, Tom. I mean, there's a clip first where we meet Captain Nichols. If you can set it up.
So this is the moment in the film where Joey and Albert have been friends for a while, and they've become almost like spiritual brothers. And war is declared in the summer of 1914, and the world has changed. And Captain Nichols is an officer in the North Somerset Yeomanry, which is a regiment of the British Cavalry, and he's arrived in the village in Devon to scout for mounts. And Ted Narracott, played by Peter Mullen, sells Joey to Captain Nichols for 30 guineas. And Albert is not happy about it.
Roll the clip.
He won't obey anyone else. He won't be any good in the war neither. He shies at every sound.
I'm sorry.
What Joe's going, I'm going too. I'm volunteering.
I see. What's your name, lad?
Albert, sir.
And how old are you,
19,
Albert?
sir.
Is that the truth?
No, sir, but I look 19 and I'm bigger than most 19-year-olds, and I'm strong, sir, and I'm not afraid of
I
anything.
don't doubt your qualifications, Albert. But the law was very clear about the proper age for soldiering. And your father's done what he had to do, you know that. 30 guineas isn't nearly enough to purchase a horse as fine as your Joey. I know that. But it's all I've got. Will you lease him to me, Albert? To be my own mount? I promise you, man to man, that I'll look after him as closely as you've done. I'll respect him and all the care that you've taken with him. And if I can, I'll return him to your care.
Tom, you had a heck of a year last year.
Yeah.
He's got very nice eyes, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, they really pop out.
It was like that's seen as like an eye competition, and Tom's clearly winning. So Jeremy tries crying to see whether or not, if he does the crying, maybe he'll distract people from the blueness.
Is it true your eyes are almost entirely CG?
Yeah.
Is that true? Or
Yeah, everything about
your
me
real
CG,
eyes,
yeah.
just to verify that. But you had a cracking year last year. You had Archipelago and The Deep Blue Sea, but I think most mainstream audiences will know you as Loki in Thor, who's a thoroughly rotten egg. Now, it's fair to say Captain Nichols is a good egg. So was it nice to play that contrast and let people know you're not a rapscallion?
Definitely, yes. Yes, I suppose I'm always drawn to complexity in roles. I think Loki is a kind of heroic villain, certainly in his own mind, and Captain Nichols is a flawed hero, because in the story he's the agent of separation. He doesn't want to separate these two, Albert from his animal, and I think it was a huge. As soon as I read it, actually, and it was that scene that was the first thing I read, you described him. I think you described in the screenplay, you described Captain Nichols as a modest, decent, upper-class English officer. And modest and decent.
Devilishly handsome, blue-eyed cad is what the original draft said.
Okay, I don't know if I read that one. But it was it's like Richard was saying, the decency was something that really appealed. That I wanted to play. It was so nice to play somebody who was good, and to represent the doomed youth of a lost generation.